and two of the main things that was pretty obvious that I really wanted to test was, one thing I realized with that, and Maxim touched on it, is that the supply is dictated by the demand at that point. So essentially what I'm saying is if there's a lot of demand on market for ICOSA and it pumps the price above that hex ICOSA ratio, it allows ICOSA to not outrun its core token, which is hex, that it's designed to protect. And then new tokens come into existence to then try to meet that demand, right? While still being a benevolent actor towards hex by locking up a ton of hex for 15 years, right? 15 plus years. So those two things are critical, but you also touch on another important fact that like there was no real way to regulate the inflation. Like, what do you do when the inflation just gets a little too wild, right? And there's not enough demand to catch up to it. So that is why, like, say with PGIF in particular, that it incentivizes the protocol to burn itself as well as the arbitrage happens. So it's a self-regulating system, which is really fascinating because these are some of the more interesting statistics I like to watch. Is what's the percentage of total PGIF that has come into existence currently burned? It started at like it kicked up to like 14% pretty quick, and then it like goes down to 12%, and then it jumped up to 18%, and then it like cools off at 16%, and now it's at 22%. So 22% of all the PGIF that it was ever minted is already deleted. Wow. So there's now a self-regulating supply mechanism that I've never seen anything like it before.
Which answers our question earlier that I put up on the screen from one of the players, was asking about, what's to stop the dumping and all of that. Would you also say that this is another patch on the leaky ships?
Absolutely.
Okay. I just want to keep making sure that Larry's pillars are being verified, validated, and we know what these leaky spots are so that everybody understands what it is that what we've created here. Because I'll admit I've been part of it from the beginning and watching these guys do this and being part of listening to it and understanding it. And one of the other things I noticed, we just talked about the ICOSA loop. You guys taught me how to use the system. Guys, I actually interacted with a contract when we first launched. RG himself interacted with a contract. Scary as fuck, I got to admit. I didn't want to screw anything up. I didn't want to screw anything I had or the contract or any of that stuff up. But it worked out. But what I noticed also is that, we talked about ICOSA and Hex and the two different types of arbitrage opportunities there, either creating more ICOSA for yourself and more Hex. But I noticed that while I was playing with the system, that not only was I, arbitraging and showing myself how to earn more p-hex based on the differences between the prices of GIF and p-hex, but I was also able to stop and load up on more of a pulse bag if I wanted to. So that's something maybe we can talk about. Is it's exactly kind of the same loop here, the arbitrage situation, where you can actually gain more pulse by playing with the Gifford system here, right?
Yeah, and so there's someone that's actually not going to leave till Big K speaks. So Big K, you're not allowed to speak all night, but I definitely actually want to hear what you have to say first. And then one other pin in that is that Alex bootstrapped the staking yield for 360 days, I believe. And so like that is why this particular system, without people using the icosahedron loop on a T-share and how that works, it needs to have another activation to go back through its methods. So this activates it on many other occurrences to make not just eHex relevant, both ICOSAs relevant, and the entire system relevant. But Big K, let's hear from you. See what you got to
say. There's some moving parts here. What I see is like that there's, basically the whatever you build on top of this, the PGIF GIF system is there's some arbitrage opportunity between them. There's about 10 pulse worth of like difference between the two tokens just by the game mechanics that you spoke up. So like it costs 10 more to create a PGIF from a GIF. So there's that like amount. So if one costs more or less than that, there should be, in theory, some arbitrage opportunity there. Now, the next layer of this is like a larger buy-in, essentially, or a larger payout to the PGIF system. So like you're like, if you're like, hey, why would I want to? Because like it's all about narratives and why we want to buy shit, and so like, why do you want to buy this? Well, if you buy the GIF token, don't do or don't or whatever. But like if you do, then there is this system, this arbitrage opportunity here that it comes with, kind of. But then also we're doing these things that will feed back into it, like iBurn. And in an iBurn situation, it's just like that, except for the inputs in the system are ICOSA, not just one ICOSA, both types of ICOSA. Neat. So that there's another arbitrage opportunity that's like going to be right here, like as we're speaking about it. These two different fucking coins that are at two different prices right now, that the same two coins can go into the pot and shit out this other token, the iBurn. Now, that iBurn to create takes more pulse. Go figure. So like that pulse that you're going to spend is not just a little bit more pulse, because like the first wave of the system is 10 pulse in it, to create a PGIF. Whereas in this one, it's what is it, 1,500?
1,500.
So you got a much bigger chunk of pulse that like is going into this system to like create the iBurn. Now I'll get further to like my questions. I have a couple, but basically like the chunk of that gets fed into buying up the PGIF GIF price, through the mechanics. 15% I think goes of the pulse goes to buying that. Is like 15% of 1,500 pulse is a lot bigger of a number, 22x some odd number,
22 and a half times greater than the 10.
Than the 10. So like the base level token of GIF is incentivized to move up quite a bit higher in price because you got this much larger buy and burn supplying it. So that's that part right there. Now the other arbitrage side, like buy and burn thing going on, is that there's ICOSA and ICOSA, or whatever, however you want to distinguish the two, and they're different prices. But if you're feeding the other 85% of the pulse that goes into the system, it's fed into buying and burning those two, then the two prices of these two tokens should come somewhere convergent, because like you're putting in half is going towards buying the one that's at fucking 4 cents and half's going to buying the one at 8 cents or 7 or whatever the hell it is right now. And so like, a lot more weight is percentage wise is going into the smaller token to ideally bring its price in some close parity. Now this takes volume to do, and like attacking, or whatever you want to call the term, piggybacking onto another token like ICOSA makes a lot of sense due to, we can all look up the volume. It's not super thick. There's not like a crap ton of volume, and there's not a crap ton of liquidity. So like, because of that, it's going to be, somewhat possible in my mind, to get these two tokens a lot closer to their parity. Now the question that I have about this all, that like after we've done this whole thing, because like I imagine that if this proprietary tech that we're working with here is something that you can add on to other tokens, I imagine there's other tokens are interested in, we can put this in whatever, then like there could be more than one feed loop going to feed your PGIF GIF, which is the base layer, getting some percentages of everything, but just like any other sort of, subscription like service that's out there, for being built on top of it. And then you're left with, at the very end of all of that, whoever is putting into this flywheel is left with, in this situation, I don't know about further layers, I burn. Now, my big question that I have to ask is, because I understand, I'm pretty dead on with what I'm saying numbers wise, and all of this.
Fantastic. Yeah,
correct?
great job.
Yeah. Okay. Now, the question that I have is, why do I want iBurn?
Well, there's a lot of different reasons, but one thing that we hope to accomplish with this, and I'm looking at the charts from the time we started talking about iBurn and being able to accept both ICOSA and ICOSA, so you can burn either one to create iBurn. Well, what's the cheaper one right now? ICOSA, right? So why would you be spending the more expensive token when you can just use the cheaper one?
You're right. There's actually two layers of why these will peg. One being the buy and burn, the other being the natural market effect, for sure.
So since we started talking about iBurn publicly last week and started releasing the flowcharts, ICOSA on Ethereum was half the price of PulseChain ICOSA. It has moved up so close that we're less than 2 cents away from the ICOSA on both chains hitting parity. So that is one of the reasons we want to do this. We also it is our hypothesis, and we're running the simulation right now. As soon as this thing is live, it is also our hope that it also re-kicks in the at least the EHEX arbitrage opportunity and the auctions that run through the ICOSA ecosystem as well. So that's just two things that I just wanted to throw out there real quick.
Those are cool. Let me remind myself, this is a narrative based game, and I mean the tech is amazing, but what's the story here?
All about narratives.
And so when I'm trying to get to the root of that, I'm like, I want parody things,
Yes.
More parody would be fantastic for those who, just were lazy sacks and didn't sell one way or the other. I'll be one of those. I'm a huge fan of it. I'd love to also restart some of the auction system was a neat piece of this puzzle. Having all that be an option for people to take part in again. Fantastic. Like I said, my only question still is why do I want this fucking iBurn, and what am I going to do with this iBurn once I get it? Let me
try to attack that in the most vague way possible.
Okay.
In the most vague way possible. Let's say that there's an arbitrage to be had on iBurn. People might be incentivized to mint the iBurn token, and thus they're putting in economic energy, right? So in a way, is it not that much different than buying off market? It's kind of similar, right? You're creating the token, you're obtaining the token by putting value in.
Yeah, whichever way. If there's a price for something, then however people are going to get to it, they're going to get to it. Sure.
Once it starts funneling the PLS into the buy and burn for iBurn, that creates a permable that is entirely a smart contract that only wants iBurn. It only wants it, and when it has it, all it wants to do is burn it.
It's interesting that
pretty vague. I'm trying to keep it vague there.
Yeah,
well, hold on. One other component that RHMax I think slipped in, but he was super correct in, is that it doesn't burn Pulse, but what it does is to take that economic energy and bakes it into that token, which the permable will delete. And because it's using that economic energy, the economic energy that goes into that is actually baked into the perma tokens that we create. That's why they're so rare and valuable, because each time you interact to create, not inflate, you're actually using that economic mass to fuel it with energy, which then is removing the tokens from supply, which is different than airdrops, inflation, all the rest of that. You're going in power the other direction. And that's why this may be a little confusing to a lot of you, because it's never been done before. It's never been thought of this way. That's why, you know, it took us an entire lifetime to learn how to fly, and then 60 years to go to the moon. Once you learn a different way to do something and you can appropriate that energy or knowledge or use case in a different method, you can do great things.
Yeah, and just to add on real quick, because iBurn's not going to exist, when we launch, there will be no iBurn, right? So if you just for a second, think about how popular providing LP is right now in this community in particular. There's a lot of people that like to provide liquidity and earn fees off of that. So if you know that you could be a whale on day one and provide liquidity, then there's an incentive for those guys to start the flywheel. They will go in, they will mint a bunch of iBurn, they will create a liquidity pair, and they'll sit back and enjoy the fees because they know they'll always have a buyer in the smart contract. Once that starts, you're already creating an arbitrage opportunity, which drives in more people who mint more, who then supply the buy and burn, where the buy and burn will just continue to buy and delete. That's all it wants to do.
Mm-hmm. Well, what we've seen with GIF and PGIF, the first iteration of this, is there's not just that arbitrage between the different tokens like we had talked about earlier, Big K, but also the arbitrage between that ceiling price of iBurn being the ICOSA price plus 1,500 PLS that it costs to run through the protocol. We saw this with GIF and PGIF, where the protocol fee is 10 pulse per GIF to turn it into perma-GIF. So we have this constant fluctuating ceiling where as the price of GIF goes up, because people are buying it to mint PGIF, as people come into the system and the price of PGIF goes above that ceiling, you're seeing people sell down the PGIF, go buy new GIF, and also have additional pulse left over to not only repeat the process, but additional pulse on top of that. So people are stacking pulse. They are getting all of their bags of GIF replaced, as well as gaining PGIF all at the same time. There's another arbitrage that isn't being talked about a lot, and I tried to talk to the people in the Telegram chat, but there is a pool for GIF and PGIF out there now, and it's got very thick liquidity provided by the users, which is great. This is so much of the liquidity in GIF and PGIF is user generated. People are seeing the fees, and they're helping put up the liquidity in this thing. And so this is not, there's no team allocation for liquidity. And we're very fortunate to have a community that understands that and understands liquidity positions. But what you're also seeing with this new GIF PGIF pool is you're seeing people, whenever the price of PGIF is below that ceiling price. So right now, let's see, last I looked at the chart, GIF was 263 pulse. PGIF was 273, but it was dipping down to like 271. So there's an opportunity now using the pool to use GIF to buy PGIF with for cheaper than it would cost to actually run through the perma-GIF protocol to mint PGIF. So people are getting a better buy using their GIF to buy PGIF. So there's an arbitrage on both sides. If it goes above the ceiling, you can get more GIF and pulse. If it goes below, you can buy PGIF for less expensive than it would be to mint it through the protocol. So there's a constant arbitrage. That's why you don't see selling like this. And there's been 10, actually, I was counting earlier today with all the volume that's gone through there. There's been hundreds of thousands of dollars in profits taken by people as they're still arbitraging and building up their pulse in their gift bags at the same time. We see, or potentially hypothesize, that the same thing's going to happen with ICOSA. So not just bring them to parity, but also have a constant burn. Because if you're to run something through a protocol that has a fee, that 85% of it is going to buy and burn that particular token, it's automatically worth more than what you originally bought it for. Plus, that arbitrage opportunity exists both directions.
You know, I wrote this in 3 smart contracts with less than 150 lines of code. So keep that in mind when we talk about all these crazy theories and like all these different mechanics at play. It's actually quite simple. It's just something that hasn't been done before. So there's a lot of crazy stuff that we can experiment with that none of us are really used to. So just keep that in mind. And this is designed to make it feasible for anybody to speculate on a crypto, not have to worry about staking it, not having to worry about coming back and unstaking it, not having to worry about connecting to dApps to claim things, not having to worry about any of that stuff. This is as complex or as simple as you want it to be.
Yep. And there's the possibility, this is agnostic too. So this protocol can be built, it has to be built individually for each token, but it is possible to do this with anything. And the different tokenomics we've thought about, the different mechanisms working behind the scenes may work differently with ICOSA versus if we were to ever to apply it to Hex, but they would be very similar and it could still have the same effect to them. Who doesn't want to bring parity to all these BRC20s? Is that not what we talked about from the speculation 2 years before PulseChain was even launched when Richard was talking about it?
Yeah, just to piggyback on that just real quick. If you're somebody who's say you're in a different community, right? Say you're in a different community, you're looking at this and you're like, this is stupid. I don't want any part of that. There's also another term that I would like the community's help to come up with of whatever the opposite of a vampire attack is. It's I like the Big K's piggyback attack. Maybe that's what it'll be, the piggyback attack or something like that.
Piggyback attack?
Who doesn't want a new protocol built on their token that simply burns their token?
Yeah.
There is no negative externality. We're not asking for a sacrifice. We're not making you give us your tokens. Nothing. All it does is it burns your token and creates arbitrage to potentially pump the token that you love most. So just remember, sure, I tested it first, or we tested it first on the gift token to see if it worked. Now we're launching it on ICOSA. Whatever your favorite token is, we could easily launch it on that. So just keep that in mind.
Not only that, also makes
and most of the people just one last thing. A lot of the guys who came in early and were all about like these other communities, and they were very critical on this protocol at first. They kind of changed their opinion really quick when they learned that it can go on their token, and now all of a sudden they're a big supporter. Now all of a sudden they really like this. They're like, okay, I love this. This is a great idea. Like when can you put it on X, Y, and Z token? So just keep that in mind. We're not extracting anybody from their community, extracting anybody from their token, trying to extract them from their ideals or their narratives. We're here to build and like get these communities back together talking again at the very least.
100.
Like
and it's actually, it adds, Piggy gets pretty good. It adds a feature onto your token, whether you were born in permatech or whether we're applying it to your use case. I know Zenith had something we wanted to pull up and talk about.
Oh, I was just wanted to go back to Big K's original question there, which is why do you want the IBERN token? I think that there's some folks out there that might feel that they missed out on the launch of GIF and PGIF, and that's understandable because at this point you can't put the genie back in the bottle. However, as I alluded to earlier, when IBERN comes out, I think that we're going to see a world where it's pre and post IBERN. What I mean by that is the permaGIF token is no longer going to be only this kind of like binary token where like GIF and PGIF are in this relationship in a balance. But now you're actually going to have IBERN come into the mix, and it's actually going to be pumping the PGIF token as well. And it is kind of acting as the new PGIF token because it is that binary between Pulse and Hedron to create that IBERN token. So if you feel like you missed out on the PGIF launch, this might be an opportunity for you. And by the way, if you look back at the charts, that's one of the reasons why you might feel that way. And then just for some quick stats, I ran some calculations earlier about the difference between PGIF and IBERN right now is that obviously PGIF uses 10 Pulse per token in the contract, and then IBERN is going to use 1,500 Pulse. Obviously, that's 150x difference in Pulse, which means there's going to be 150x more buying power to buy and burn the IBERN token. And then if you want to see what it's done with the price of PGIF over the time is that it's actually reduced because PGIF is more expensive in terms of Pulse. It means that it is now a lower percentage of Pulse that is buying that token. Because IBERN has not had this functionality yet, it means that Pulse is going to be a lot higher percentage to start with. So, for example, right now it costs about 0.58 or 0.058 cents in Pulse to make a PGIF out of GIF. And if you wanted to do that with iBurn out of Hedron, right now it would cost you about 7.5 cents of Pulse. If you look at that in percentage terms, it means that the Pulse in terms of PGIF is 3.6% of the price versus the iBurn or Hedron right now, which is sitting at about 6.8 cents. The Pulse required to make that is actually greater than the value of the token now, and that ratio is 109%, which means that the opportunity in relation from the economic value of Pulse buying and burning its own token is pretty much like 30 times higher than the proven token that the guy succeeded with the experiment of GIF and PGIF.